With the brand new release of the CLP-700 series, we're bringing you the flagship, the 785, and we're comparing it to the 745, the mid-price point option. Let's check it out.
Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music Center in beautiful downtown San Antonio, Texas.
And I'm Patrick Marr. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our other videos, sign up for notifications, leave us comments, like our videos. We really appreciate all your support, and thank you again for watching. Well, Ted, this is exciting for us because we have a brand new Clavinova line, and it slowly started to trickle in. Last year in 2019, I guess it's 2 years now, Happy New Year to 2021. But in the previous year, there was the CVP 800 series, which was really cool. We had done some videos on the CVP 805 and the 809. Yamaha has historically had these two branches of Clavinova, and there's the CVP line, and then there's the CLP line. In the last 5 years, they've introduced the CSP, which is the Smart Pianist. But really, like their bread and butter is CVP and CLP. And we saw a CVP release in the 800 series about in 2019. 2020, they announced the CLP-700 series, which is a continuation on from their 600 series. And so we spent many years playing the 600 series. I think
685 was one of my favorite. That was my favorite Clavinova.
And so I know it's exciting for you to have this one right behind us, and it's the new and improved version, the 785. And our piano. So I'm going to ask you. You've been around Clavinovas for a good portion of your life.
From the beginning. I had the last thing they made before they came out with the Clavinova line was I'm at a loss for the model number now, but it was like the predecessor to the Clavinova.
Okay, and so in your experience, you've seen these new models come out. Is it like a car where they're like, okay, this is the 2020 model, this is the 2021 model, this is the...
No, they're not doing them every year, but what seems to happen is the minute that, like, for example, they come out with the 785, the one that we're featuring, is the minute this thing comes out, they're already probably starting to get a backlog of features to put into the next one based on customer and dealer feedback. It's like, oh, why'd you do that for? What'd you do this? Or how's that going to work? And what's coming up next.
Yeah.
And so on this one here, it's kind of surprising they have some new, I'd say, inside the cabinet and software features that really improves the overall concept of it being a self-contained piano.
Yeah.
And they added some new sounds.
Yeah.
And they're exciting if you want to sound like Scarlatti's piano and Chopin's piano, and we'll get to those.
You're hinting to the forte pianos, which... Yeah. On the CLP-785 behind us, there's all four selection there of the forte pianos. In the 745, which isn't behind us, but we are going to be playing it here today, that one only has two samples from forte pianos. So they kind of add. To me, it's almost a wink to the classics.
It is, and you know, they use forte piano, and at first my idea of forte piano was basically a grand piano with no pedals. And, well, the pedals stay on this one. It has the sounds in there. But what's really interesting is I have gone on, I think it's somewhere on the internet, like Wikipedia, one of those things, if you put in like Beethoven's piano or Mozart's piano, they'll show you a picture of it. And then if you're lucky, they'll show you the inside, and you can compare it to a modern day piano.
Straight
and think,
strings. And
yeah, this looks kind of primitive. And then when you hear it, and now you can hear them, they're on here, but it's surprising. The sound that you hear on here is really a close approximation of what you get off the internet with headphones, like, oh, that's Beethoven's piano. And it really sounds like a piano with a harpsichord in it at the same time.
It's interesting because while you're describing that, it's really interesting because you hear what you see in the pictures, and you see in the pictures what you hear. But I think that's a testament to how powerful their imaging software is, and their sampling, the capabilities now, and how much data you can fit in a unit this big.
Compared to all the digital piano samples that we're used to, these things really don't sound that hot. I mean, they sound like clunky old...
But they sound so real right here.
They sound real right here. But
and I in the Real Grand Expression 2, which is what Yamaha is calling it, it's basically their sound card for the new model. And it's really kind of amazing because as you go through the 700 series on the Bosendorfer and on the CFX, you hear this incredible sound, and they have a binaural sample of it. And then they also trickle in, like they spent they spent all this money going and get samples from these Forte pianos.
Right.
And it kind of is incredible how Yamaha has done both those things simultaneously and brought you this old kind of clunky sounding instrument next to your Bosendorfer Imperial sample in your CFX.
I don't want to laugh, but it's kind of like, Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin, no matter how well they played, they really didn't sound that good in concert. Because it's sad. It's like, these guys were masters of the instrument, and they've never heard, for example, a Shiguru Kawai piano.
Yeah.
Or they've never played on a CFX Yamaha.
An Imperial Bosendorfer with
never
extra keys.
Right.
And so it's kind of incredible what Yamaha is bringing to its consumers at an affordable price. Not only the experience of hearing and playing on something that Mozart or Beethoven or Scarlatti played on, and getting to hear that and have that experience and make those pieces a little bit more fun, like, oh, I'm here. But you also have the opportunity to be playing these $250,000 instruments, the CFX and the Bosendorfer Imperial. And really that's all due to their Rio Grande Expression 2 system that they have said this is one of those things they've been building for the last couple years. So since that 600 series has been released, this 700 series was in the works, like you were saying. And I remember when the 600 series came out, the first thing they wanted was Bluetooth MIDI control. They didn't want to have to plug in the iPad for it to control the unit. And that's something that Yamaha addressed here, and they have it now not only compatible with Bluetooth audio, which the previous generation did have, but Bluetooth MIDI, so you're able to control the unit with the apps directly without having to plug it in, which is, in today's age, everyone's used to everything connecting remotely. But yeah, you were talking a little bit about that imaging software, the Grand Acoustic Imaging, and that is it's not going to be on the 745 that we're going to be playing today.
They
but
just have it on here.
They have it on here. And so kind of describe how Yamaha puts it. Because it's kind of funny because Yamaha spends all this money and all this technology building these products, but the nitty gritty nuts and bolts is something...
It's really hard for them to take all of those software improvements, okay, like this imaging, the acoustic imaging and the expression, because it has to work alongside and along with the sound system.
Mm-hmm.
The sound system on this piano, even from its predecessor, is awesome compared to, not that there's anything wrong with the other Clavinovas, but this one here, they have separated the highs, and they've had the ported bass down below, and it really makes it like it's a real upright, or you get the semblance that there's a grand piano when you're playing the grand piano around and the sound is there. Now, if you move that into the lower line, there's not the capability and the
wattage.
the wattage, or let alone the separation of the highs, mids, and lows in those smaller Clavinova units, where I don't know that you can boost the air around the instrument to be more like what a real piano is. Because it's really interesting. There was, if you could see the sound waves coming off of a real piano, it's really interesting because you would get these nice, beautiful rainbow-type patterns that would change around the keyboard, but off on the side and underneath, you get these different reflections, and that's kind of where their software is aiming at. When the sound is out there and the player's playing, can you still touch a note while the pedal's down and there's notes ringing, and touch a note in a softer way that it'll stand out from the other notes? And that's where their improvements are coming into.
And so not only do they do that with the acoustic imaging, like you said, where they're trying to recreate basically in 3D, like if you put this in the middle of the room and you played it, would it feel like there's a grand piano body behind it, and would you be able to see those sound waves? And they're really pushing hard on that, and I know they've spent a ton of money doing it. But the expression, like you said, the grand expression modeling, that also, every variation of a keystroke, no matter how hard you hit it or how soft you hit it, there's depth of a key, there's also intensity of how hard or soft and what that is going to do to the overall sound. But these are things that they're constantly improving and constantly uploading new data to their system. They spent a ton of money. The binaural sample, which we loved on the 685, really kind of one of those things that opened people's eyes to, wait, what if we did it like this? And if you haven't heard about the binaural sampling, they basically took a crash dummy, put him in front of a CFX 9-foot or 6-foot or 9-foot CFX.
Put microphones in his ears.
Yeah. So if you were sitting there in front of the CFX, what would it sound like in a beautiful recording studio? And they gave that to you. Not only did they redo that whole entire sample and put it in here. In the new 700 series, they redid that entire binaural sample on the CFX, but they also did it on the Bosendorfer Imperial because of the success.
The new samples on those.
So you have that not only in the 785, but in the 745 as well, and the 735. So really, Yamaha is just trying to give you a lot more in these new models that people have come to love. The other thing is the feel. So you had talked about on the 685, the Grand Touch was something introduced on the 685, came out on the 695, that grand piano body shape. But just it's a longer key. It's got more sensitivity. It's graded even more precisely from the heaviness and the bass section all the way up to the high notes and to the treble. But they've introduced the Grand Touch S into the 745. S stands for small. So the keys aren't as long on the Grand Touch that's going to be in the 745, but they did the same kind of technology improvements, and they're able to grade it a little bit more closely from the bass section to the top, and they're able to. It's a sturdier action, so you don't get any wiggle at all. It's very much like an acoustic instrument where it feels like a solid action, and so just really exciting that they did improve the actions throughout the line. The 645 before the 745 had the NWX action, which people loved because it had those wood keys. But the NWX has been upgraded now to the Grand Touch S. Sound samples, the ones that they really care about, I think there's 54 in this one and there's 38 in the 745. So we'll go through some of those. But then there's all, the 480 light, they call them light samples.
The XGs.
Yeah, the XG lights. And those are fun instruments, but those are menu divers. You have to go in. Really, if you're interested in a whole bunch of different sounds and recording technology, the CVP line from Yamaha might be a more interesting, or the CSP too. Those might be a more interesting for you or your kids or whoever's learning lessons. The CLP line, how would you describe CLP versus CVP?
The CVP is, it's more like a workstation. I mean, I've always seen the CVP as a workstation as opposed to an instrument to practice on, which is really what the CLPs are. Not that it's a hard line, but what I'm getting at is the CVP has a way to teach, a way to entice people that maybe aren't even interested in playing, like say, for example, the dad paying the money for the kids to learn, and then he can go down there and sit there and follow a note. There's a bunch of different ways to play music through the accompaniment and the features. It'll put songs together, and then it has that 16-track MIDI studio. There's a lot of super features on the CVP, whereas the CLP line is more of the instrument without all of the bells and whistles or what a lot of piano teachers call toys. Yeah. They see them as distractions. But if a child's only going to play an hour a day, and they have a CLP, they'll play an hour a day. If they have a CVP, well, they'll probably play an hour a day for their lesson and then maybe fool around for 2 hours more. So as long as they're pushing the keys and playing, they're learning. That's
some insight on
advantage.
whether you want to look at the CVP line. But the CLP, I would agree, is a little bit more for a piano lesson, piano focus. All the control. They even did this on the 785. The control panel on the 785 is a little bit, it turns off while you're not using it so that it kind of focuses on just the instrument. There's not bright lights in your face or anything like that. It kind of is hearkening towards an acoustic instrument. We did want to talk about the case design as well. So the CLP-785 behind us, it looks a little bit more like a studio piano. It's still shorter than a studio piano, but has that real nice design, whereas on the 645, it's a smaller profile, kind of more traditional when it comes to a digital in-home piano that people think of. It's a real small profile, lighter body.
This piano and its predecessor and the polished ebony is a great looking instrument. And you could plop one of those down into a music venue or a bar or a restaurant, and it would look just like a regular acoustic piano sitting there. And that is the nice thing about it. It is nice that they put the light kind of like your phone. It goes off and then you touch it, it'll come back on. It's going to take some getting used to. For me, it did, because I'm used to it always being on. You're playing, okay, I can do that, I can bump one. You look at it, it's a distraction. And I think that's probably why they made it go off. So that a student practicing will practice and not keep looking at it and changing sounds for no reason. Yeah,
so something to be aware of is that the screen controls are a little bit different between these two models. But yeah, so we're gonna take a listen to them. We're gonna play them and play some of the differences, see if you can hear a difference. There are, again, the grand acoustic imaging is going to be different on both of these. And then they're going to have different number of voices as well as those forte pianos.
The forte pianos are important. And I was thinking about this as we were talking, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% positive, I'm going to go check, but Beethoven actually wrote Moonlight Sonata on a harpsichord. Okay, so that's, and a lot of those piano, and there's, putting the forte pianos into this instrument is a major step because, well, then do you use the pedals when you play these pieces that Beethoven and Mozart wrote without pedals? The first pedals they had to use a knee. It was
like a lever.
Like a lever underneath, like the harpsichord levers, and that's if they even had that on there. So a lot of those pieces, the only way they could really express themselves was to play a lot of notes real fast, which is why in Mozart you have that famous quote, "too many notes." And that's the only way you could express yourself on a harpsichord was to get flashy and play a lot and run all these riffs. You couldn't get louder and you couldn't get softer. It just played one volume.
It played how it played.
And so the forte piano was the first thing that gave the player, I can play loud, I can play soft, and I can do it fast or slow. And so I have more expression.
More control.
More control.
Well, let's take a listen to these forte pianos and to some of these cool features on the 785 and the 745. Let's check it out. Well, Ted, I don't know about you. I love playing those instruments. They sounded great to me. They felt great. The big thing for me was the feeling between the 745 and moving up to the 785. The Grand Touch S is it's great. It feels great, but you really get like that counterweight feel on the Grand Touch on the 785. It's just a little bit more expressive for me. Also a better feeling of control. That longer key I think really does it for me. It's just like it's like a nice flow. But you had something to say about the pedals.
Yeah. The what I like is when we review Clavinovas in these upright or grand piano replacement things, whatever you want to call them, is that they have 3 pedals. So they have not just a sustain pedal. When we're doing those other keyboards, we get a sustain pedal, and sometimes it's just on and off. And for a gig out in, outside or indoors, that's usually pretty good. But if you wanted to get into more of playing a piano and making use of all this technology that they make it so that it does exactly like a real piano, one of the things that has been upgraded, and it's relatively new to digital pianos, is the gradient response on all the pedaling, so that you can have partial pedaling. And the sustain pedal, still not perfect in partial pedaling, but the damper pedal is really getting there, and it's a gradient. And on an upright piano, when you press on the damper pedal, the hammers get closer to the strings so they don't play as loud. On a grand piano, the hammers actually shift over, and instead of hitting 3 strings, you're hitting 2, and you're hitting it with a different part of the felt from the hammer. That is reflected on this piano. You can get that partial pedaling where it used to, if you were lucky, it was on off. And then I think the first gradient they had on a damper pedal was about 2 or 3 grades. And I'm pretty sure it was Yamaha that did that first, but now it's starting to get picked up by the others. The digital pianos that are new models that have 3 pedals built into it, or like in the instance we looked at other portable, and they come with a stand and they have that 3 pedal board as an option. I always highly recommend it. And it doesn't really add that much to the price when you consider what it does. Yeah. In terms of expression.
Well, how you can.
Right.
So yeah, so on the 785, it's the only one out of the new 700 series that has that gradient damper pedal. So your left pedal has a gradient curve, and it's not a half point. It's not on off. It's a gradient. The more you press it down, the more it's gonna not only have more resistance, but it's gonna work and move it over more precisely. So just really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, really cool things from Yamaha. They really want to put as much technology as they can. I think the big thing for a lot of people is going to be that Bluetooth MIDI controller. You can sync it up real quickly with your iPad or your Android and use the apps like Smart Pianist and some of the other ones like Flowkey, and that Yamaha incorporates their product with, and really start to use this as an in-home instrument. The 785 would be great for a piano teacher. We've had multiple piano teachers here in San Antonio choose the 780 or the 685. The 785 hasn't been available, but the 685 as their studio piano doesn't need to be tuned, easy to move around, doesn't have to worry about any issues going on with it. So the 785 I think is going to be a great instrument for choir teachers, for piano teachers, for the players that are willing to take the next step up and really spend some money on something that's quality. The 745 I think is going to go to a lot of homes. The 645 was really popular. It was the introduction into wooden keys on a Clavinova. Intermediate to advanced players are going to love it. It will be a great studio instrument.
Teachers like them.
Yeah,
they like their students playing on them.
And so it's just really a nice offering here from Yamaha, and we wanted to highlight these two because they are very popular, especially for those more advanced players that are looking for that next step. And so Ted, thank you again for being here and doing videos with us. I'm Patrick Marr. You can find us online, alamomusic.com, where we can help you answer any questions you have about digital pianos. Again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our other videos, and sign up for notifications. We love to bring you new content, and we love to do these videos, and me and Ted love to play the piano for you guys. Thanks for watching.